I am the Sleepy Professor. Tonight, we are traveling back, not thousands of years, but millions, to a world that was once ours, but looks nothing like the one you know. Settle in. Let the weight of the present moment fade. We are going to visit the giants. Before the dinosaurs, the world nearly ended. 250 million years ago, a great darkness fell. The Great Dying. The oceans grew warm and still. The land became a desert. Almost everything that lived vanished. But in the quiet that followed, life did not give up. Small reptilian pioneers began to stir in the dust. They were the survivors. They were the seeds of an empire. The silence was the beginning of the roar. In the beginning, all the land was one, Pangaea, a single massive continent stretching from pole to pole. The center of this world was a vast red desert. The heat was a constant weight. Here, the first dinosaurs appeared. They were not yet the monsters of our legends. They were sleek, fast, no larger than a person. They lived in the shadows of larger creatures, waiting, developing a new way to walk, a new way to breathe, preparing for the rain. The great continent began to fracture. The earth groaned as the crust split apart. As the land drifted, the climate shifted. The dry heat gave way to humidity. The first great forests of ferns and cycads began to spread. And as the world grew green, the dinosaurs grew large. Their bodies expanded to fill the new, lush spaces. The age of the giants was no longer a dream. It was becoming the reality of the earth. Imagine a creature so large it moved like a slow-motion mountain. The sauropods, the long necks, their bodies were masterpieces of biological engineering. To support such weight, their bones were filled with air, like the bones of birds, light yet incredibly strong. They did not chew their food. They swallowed leaves whole, along with smooth stones to grind in the plants in their bellies. A slow internal mill, churning in the quiet of the Jurassic afternoon. The Jurassic world was a world of giants, but also of whispers. The drip of water from a giant fern, the rustle of a lizard in the undergrowth, a low, heavy thrum of a brachiosaurus breathing. These animals were so massive, their hearts beat slowly, a rhythmic, steady pulse. They moved in herds, their footsteps vibrating through the soft, damp soil. A world of scale, where even the wind seemed to move with more weight. Where there is life, there is the hunter, the Allosaurus, the lion of the Jurassic. It moved through the shadows of the carnivores with a terrifying, silent grace. It did not need to be fast. It only needed to be patient. Its teeth were serrated like the edge of a saw. In the twilight, it watched the herds from the edge of the trees, a reminder that even in a world of giants, balance is kept by the sharp and the hungry. Something small was happening in the trees, a transformation. A dinosaur no larger than a crow developed a new kind of skin, not scales, but soft, insulated down. Archaeopteryx. It had the claws of a lizard, but the wings of a bird. It was a bridge between two worlds. It reminds us that evolution is not always about size. Sometimes it is about the ability to leave the ground, to find a new perspective in the sky. By the Cretaceous, the world was unrecognizable. Pangaea had shattered into pieces. The continents were drifting toward their modern places. Isolated by the new seas, the dinosaurs became specialized. In the north, the horned giants. In the south, the long-necked titans grew even larger. The world was a collection of island continents, each one a laboratory for a different kind of life. The diversity of the earth was blooming, along with the very first flowers. For millions of years, the world had been green and brown. But in the late Cretaceous, color arrived. The first flowering plants began to bloom: magnolias, water lilies, and with them the insects. Bees and butterflies began their ancient dance with the petals. The dinosaurs walked through fields of blossoms for the first time, a softening of the world, a splash of beauty just before the curtain began to fall. As the world became more crowded, the dinosaurs became fortresses. The Ankylosaurus, a creature raped in bone. Its back was a landscape of hard plates and spikes. At the end of its tail, a heavy, stony club. It did not run. It did not hide. It simply lowered its head and waited. A low-slung mountain of defense. Proof that in the late Cretaceous, the Earth was learning how to protect itself. In the cooling forests of the north, the ceratopsians appeared, the Triceratops. They carried great shields of bone upon their necks, 3 horns pointing toward the horizon. They moved in massive herds, like a silver sea of moving shields. They used their beaks to shear through the toughest palms. When they slept, they huddled together, a circle of armor, keeping the cold and the predators at bay. The Cretaceous was not a silent era. The hadrosaurs, the duck-billed dinosaurs, carried instruments on their heads, long, hollow, bony crests. When they breathed, the air vibrated through these chambers, creating a low, haunting trumpet call, a sound that could travel for miles through the thick, humid air. The forests echoed with their songs, a deep, resonant conversation between the giants and the trees. There were places where the land met the water, and there lived the Spinosaurus, a giant with a sail upon its back, like a frozen wave of bone. It was a creature of the margins, with a long, narrow snout designed for the water. It waited in the reeds, silent as a fallen log, watching the ripples, a master of 2 worlds, reminding us that the dinosaurs had claimed the rivers just as they had claimed the plains. For a long time, we thought they were cold, sluggish like the lizards of today, but we were wrong. The dinosaurs were a fire that burned from within. Their growth was too fast, their movements too energetic for a cold heart. They carried a metabolic engine, a warmth that allowed them to live in the snowy forests of the poles. They were not waiting for the sun to wake them. They were the sun, internal, steady, and alive. Imagine a high, dry plateau, the nesting grounds of the Maiasaura, the good mother lizard. Thousands of nests scooped out of the earth. Inside, the eggs were guarded with a fierce, patient love. The parents brought green shoots to the hatchlings. The ground was covered in the tracks of the young. It was a nursery of giants, a place of soft sounds and careful steps. The gentleness hidden within the scale. The air was not empty. High above the forests, the pterosaurs drifted. They were not dinosaurs, but they were the masters of the Cretaceous wind. The Quetzalcoatlus, a creature with a wingspan as wide as a small plane. When it stood on the ground, it was as tall as a giraffe. It used the rising heat of the earth to soar for thousands of miles, a silent, leathery shadow, watching the world from a height that no other living thing could reach. The world of the dinosaurs had its own distinct perfume, the spicy scent of crushed pine needles, the heavy, sweet smell of the first rotting fruit, the metallic tang of the volcanic ash on the wind. Everything was intensified by the heat, a thick, sensory atmosphere. If you were there, you would feel the weight of the air on your skin. A planet, it felt, densely and completely occupied. We must speak of the Tyrannosaurus rex. It was not a scavenger, nor a clumsy beast. Its brain was large, its senses sharp. It had eyes that faced forward, giving it the depth of a hawk. It could see you, even if you stood perfectly still. Its sense of smell was a map of the world. It could track a scent through a storm. When it moved, it was a calculated, powerful grace, the absolute terrifying peak of the predator's art. The world was at its height. The forests were lush. The oceans were full. The dinosaurs were the undisputed masters of every horizon. But far away, in the cold dark beyond the atmosphere, a mountain of rock was moving. It had been traveling for millions of years, a silent, patient visitor. The dinosaurs did not see it. They did not know that the Golden Age was about to meet the light. Imagine the last quiet hour of the Cretaceous. The sun is low, painting the ferns in shades of deep amber. The herds are moving toward the water, their shadows long and thin. There is no warning, no change in the wind. The insects still buzz, and the young hatchlings still call from the nests. The world is as it has always been, stable, eternal. But high above, the atmosphere is beginning to ripple. A visitor is arriving, uninvited and unseen. A flash, brighter than 1,000 suns. The asteroid enters the air, moving faster than sound could ever carry. It strikes the shallow sea near the Yucatan. In an instant, the rock and the water become one, vaporized into a white heat. The earth rippled like a pond. A shock wave of air, hot enough to ignite the forests, races across the continents. Before the sound could even arrive, the landscape was transformed. The age of the giants is met with the speed of the stars. Where the rock hit the sea, the ocean was displaced. A wave miles high began to race outward. A mountain of water, traveling at the speed of a jet. It scoured the coastlines of the world. It carried the sand and the salt deep into the forests. The homes of the dinosaurs, The nesting grounds, the quiet rivers, were buried under the weight of the sea. A chaotic, relentless baptism, returning the land to the deep. The impact threw billions of tons of debris into space. Molten rock turned into tiny beads of glass. As they fell back into the atmosphere, they began to glow. The sky turned red, a rain of fire falling over every corner of the globe. The friction of their fall heated the air until the forests began to burn on their own. There was nowhere to hide. The very air that gave them life had become a furnace. Then, the light went out. The dust and the soot from the fires rose high into the sky. It wrapped around the earth like a heavy, black shroud. It blocked the sun. For months, perhaps years, the world was in twilight. The plants, the ferns, the great conifers began to wither. Without the sun, the engine of life slowed down. The temperature dropped. A sudden, bitter winter settling over a world that had only ever known the heat. With the plants gone, the hunger began. The great sauropods, the mountains of flesh, could not find enough to eat. They needed hundreds of pounds of grain every day. One by one, the giants grew weak. Their heavy footsteps became slow, and then they stopped. The predators followed. The tyrants, the kings, found no more prey to hunt. The food chain was unraveling. A quiet, hollow collapse. The weight of being large had become a burden. But in the dark, something was still moving. Small creatures, hiding in burrows, living in the hollows of fallen trees. The mammals. They were small enough to survive on very little. They ate the roots, the insects, the remains of the old world. They were warm-blooded, protected by fur. While the giants perished in the cold, the small, the humble, and the patient were waiting for the sun to return. Not every dinosaur vanished. The ones that had learned to fly, the small, feathered ones, found a way through the darkness. They could travel further for food. They could survive on seeds that lasted through the winter. When the dust finally cleared and the sun touched the earth again, they were there to greet it. The songbirds of today are the echoes of the raptors. The dinosaurs did not leave us entirely. They just changed their shape to fit a smaller world. Beneath the layers of ash, the giants were turning to stone. Mineral-rich water seeped into their bones. Cell by cell, the living tissue was replaced by silica and iron. They became part of the Earth's memory, locked in the strata, waiting for millions of years while the continents moved and the mountains rose. A secret library, hidden in the deep, silent dark. We look at their bones now and we feel small. They remind us that no empire is eternal. The world belongs to those who can adapt. The dinosaurs were magnificent. They were powerful. But they were a chapter, not the whole book. As you sleep, Think of the layers of time beneath you. The giants are still there, resting in the stone. A quiet, heavy foundation for our own story. Rest now. The earth is old and it knows how to keep its secrets. Let us step back into the light of the mid-Jurassic, to the Stegosaurus, a creature defined by the great bony plates along its spine. For a long time, we wondered if they were shields, but they were thin, filled with delicate blood vessels. They were solar panels. In the cool morning mist, the Stegosaurus would turn its side to the sun, catching the first rays, warming its blood. In the heat of the afternoon, it would turn to the wind, using those same plates to shed the heat, a living radiator tuned to the rhythm of the day. At the other end of the Stegosaurus was the Phagomizer, 4 long, wicked spikes of bone. It did not have the speed to run from an Allosaurus. It had the swing, a flexible tail powered by massive muscles. One strike could shatter the leg of a predator. It was a defensive masterpiece, passive and peaceful while grazing, but a whirlwind of bone and power when cornered. The quiet, heavy geometry of survival. In the Cretaceous forests, the trees bled. Sticky golden resin. It dripped down the bark of ancient conifers. Sometimes it trapped a small traveler, a primitive ant, a feather from a passing raptor, a tiny, delicate lizard. The resin hardened, turning into amber, a perfect, transparent seal. While the great bones turned to stone, the amber kept the soft things, the colors, the hairs, the cells, a golden snapshot of a world that refused to vanish. The dinosaurs were travelers. They followed the green. As the seasons shifted, massive herds of hadrosaurs moved across the plains, thousands of animals moving as one. They followed the scent of the rain, crossing rivers, climbing hills. Their paths became the roads of the ancient world. The ground was packed hard by their passage, a slow, relentless migration, stretching from the heart of the continents to the very edges of the sea. While the dinosaurs ruled the land, the sea was a kingdom of giants, the mosasaurs, the plesiosaurs. They were not dinosaurs, but they were the titans of the deep, with flippers like wings and jaws that could swallow a shark. They patrolled the warm, shallow inland seas, breathing air but belonging to the salt. They watched the dinosaurs from the surf, 2 empires divided by the shoreline, sharing the same ancient sun. Think of the Deinonychus, the terrible claw. It was not a brute, it was a strategist. Its brain was large, its eyes were sharp. It hunted in coordination, using its speed and its curved toe claws to strike. It represents the intellectual side of the Mesozoic, a world where being smart was just as important as being big. A feathered, fast, and calculating shadow in the brush. The earth was restless during the age of the dinosaurs. The ground often trembled. In the distance, great volcanoes poured ash into the sky. The Deccan traps, massive floods of basalt covering thousands of miles. The air often carried the scent of sulfur. The dinosaurs lived on a planet that was still forming, still cooling, still exhaling its internal fire. They were the children of a restless and growing world. How did a giant sleep? Imagine a brachiosaurus resting its long neck along the ground, or a triceratops lowering its heavy head into the ferns. They slept in short bursts, always listening. The vibration of the earth was their alarm clock. The hoot of a nearby scavenger, their lullaby. In the deep, prehistoric night, the giants were at their most vulnerable, huddled together, dreaming of the green and the light. While the dinosaurs dominated the day, we dominated the night. The early mammals, our ancestors, were small, like shrews or opossums. We developed the ability to see in the dark, to hear the highest frequencies. We lived in the night shift of history, eating the scraps the giants left behind, nursing our young with milk, keeping our heat within our fur. We were a quiet, hidden experiment, waiting for our time under the moon. When a dinosaur died, the earth worked quickly. If it fell in a river, the silt would cover it, protecting the bones from the air, protecting the story from the wind. The weight of the mud would press down, turning to shale. The water would carry minerals into the marrow. The earth was tucking them in, preparing them for the long, slow wait until a different kind of creature would find them again. In the late Cretaceous, the sky belonged to the impossible, the Quetzalcoatlus, a pterosaur with a wingspan as wide as a small airplane. When it folded its leathery wings and stood on the ground, it was as tall as a giraffe. It did not flap its wings to stay aloft. It harvested the earth's breath. It found the rising pillars of warm air, the thermals, and it circled higher and higher, looking down at the dinosaurs as if they were pebbles in a stream, a silent, watchful king of the heights. Deep inside the belly of a longback, there was a symphony of stone. Because they had no teeth for chewing, they swallowed the earth. Highly polished river stones called gastroliths. As the dinosaur walked, as it breathed, these stones rolled together, grinding the tough pine needles and cycad fronds into a soft pulp. If you stood close to a sleeping diplodocus, you might hear the low, muffled clinking of those stones, a rhythmic, internal tectonic shift, the sound of a mountain digesting a forest. As the era drew toward its close, a new sound entered the woods. Not a roar, not a hiss, but a whistle. The first true birds were appearing, the avian dinosaurs. They moved with a frantic, high-energy grace. They were the only one who could see the world from the canopy. While the T-Rex claimed the soil, these small pioneers claimed the light. They were the emergency backup of the dinosaur lineage, the small, feathered insurance policy that would ensure the family name lived on forever. The earth was warmer then, but the poles still knew the dark. In the forests of ancient Antarctica, dinosaurs lived in the twilight. For months at a time, the sun would not rise. The Leolanosaura lived there, with eyes that grew large to see in the gloom. They did not hibernate. They moved through the frosted ferns, their breath huffing in the cold air. They adapted to the shadows. They found a way to thrive where the light was a memory. Proof that the dinosaurs were not just creatures of the sun, but masters of the chill. Nature is a patient sculptor, Over millions of years, it perfected the tool of the bite. The hadrosaurs, the duck-billed giants, had dental batteries, hundreds of teeth packed tightly together like a cobblestone street. As the top layer wore down, a new one pushed up from beneath, a self-sharpening, eternal machine for eating. They could grind through wood. They could crush the toughest bark. A slow, steady, industrial process, fueling the massive engines of their bodies, one leaf at a time. As the era drew toward its close, a new sound entered the woods. Not a roar, not a hiss, but a whistle. The first true birds were appearing, the avian dinosaurs. They moved with a frantic, high-energy grace. They were the only one who could see the world from the canopy. While the T-Rex claimed the soil, these small pioneers claimed the light. They were the emergency backup of the dinosaur lineage, the small, feathered insurance policy that would ensure the family name lived on forever. The Earth was warmer then, but the poles still knew the dark. In the forests of ancient Antarctica, dinosaurs lived in the twilight. For months at a time, the sun would not rise. The Leelanosaura lived there, with eyes that grew large to see in the gloom. They did not hibernate. They moved through the frosted ferns, their breath huffing in the cold air. They adapted to the shadows. They found a way to thrive where the light was a memory. Proof that the dinosaurs were not just creatures of the sun, but masters of the chill. Nature is a patient sculptor. Over millions of years, it perfected the tool of the bite. The hadrosaurs, the duck-billed giants, had dental batteries, hundreds of teeth packed tightly together like a cobblestone street. As the top layer wore down, a new one pushed up from beneath, a self-sharpening, eternal machine for eating. They could grind through wood. They could crush the toughest bark. A slow, steady, industrial process, fueling the massive engines of their bodies, one leaf at a time. Imagine a long, bony crest curving back from a dinosaur's head. The Parasaurolophus. This was not a weapon. It was a musical instrument, a hollow tube connected to the nasal passages. When it blew air through that crest, it created a low-frequency moan, a sound so deep it could be felt in the chest of every animal for miles. It was a foghorn in the prehistoric mist, a way to call to the herd across the vast, humid swamps, a haunting, lonely melody, the soundtrack of the Cretaceous afternoon. Sometimes history is found in the humble, coprolites, fossilized droppings. They tell us what the giants ate for their very last meal. Bits of bone, seeds of ancient fruits, the scales of fish. They are the chemical diaries of the deep past. Through them, we see the connections. Who hunted whom? Which plants were in bloom? The messy, organic reality of a living world, locked in stone and waiting for us to read the fine print. Even the T-Rex had to find a place to lay its head. Imagine the king of the world lowering its massive bulk onto a soft bed of moss. It would tuck its small arms against its chest. It would close those forward-facing eyes, and for a few hours, the forest would breathe a sigh of relief. the heavy, rhythmic snoring of the predator, a sound like distant thunder. In its dreams, perhaps it was still chasing the herds, or perhaps it was just enjoying the warmth of the cooling, prehistoric soil. The earth beneath the dinosaurs was always moving, an inch a year, a mile every century. South America pulled away from Africa. India began its long, lonely trek toward Asia. The dinosaurs were the passengers on these giant, rocky rafts. As the land moved, the climate changed. New mountains rose, casting long shadows over the plains. The map was being redrawn while they slept. A slow, silent geography, carrying the giants toward their final, rocky destination. We are halfway through our journey into the deep. The sun of the Mesozoic is setting in our minds. The ferns are swaying in a phantom breeze. Your breathing has found the rhythm of the long necks. Slow, heavy, deep. There is so much more to see in the layers of the earth, but for now, just feel the weight of the time. Millions of years pressing gently upon the present. Rest. The giants are watching over your sleep. In the dappled light of the Cretaceous forest, a small brain was working. The Troodon. It was small, but its eyes were vast, and its brain was larger for its body than any other. It did not rely on the weight of its muscles. It relied on the speed of its thoughts. It could see in the low light of dawn when the giants were still sluggish. It worked with its kin, a silent, feathered conspiracy. It reminds us that the dinosaurs were not just a story of brown. They were developing the first sparks of a complex, calculating mind. A sharp, clever shadow in the ferns. Go back now to the early Jurassic. The Dilophosaurus. It carried two delicate, paper-thin crests of bone upon its head. They were not for fighting. They were too fragile for the strike. They were billboards of the ancient world. Vibrant colors, perhaps pulsing with blood to signal to a mate, or to warn a rival in the misty morning. It moved with a light, springy step, a creature of the transition, bearing its ornaments with a proud, prehistoric grace. In the middle of North America, there was once an ocean, a shallow, warm turquoise sea that split the continent in tier, the Western Interior Seaway. The dinosaurs walked along its sandy shores. They left their footprints in the wet lime, which the sun then baked into stone. You can still see them today, frozen in the rock of the high plains. A trail of three-toed steps leading into a sea that is no longer there. A ghost of a coastline, preserved in the dry, silent heart of the land. In the humid air, the insects were constant, the ancestors of the mosquito, the biting flies, the ticks. They drew the life from the giants. They carried the microscopic parasites of the Mesozoic. A dinosaur was not just a single animal, but a walking ecosystem. Millions of tiny lives living on the skin, in the gut, in the blood. The same web of life that surrounds us today was already woven into the scales and feathers of the ancients. a small, buzzing persistence. In the north, where the winter lasted for months, the earth grew cold. Some dinosaurs may have found a way to wait. They would retreat into deep burrows or huddle in the sheltered canyons. Their heartbeats would slow. Their breath would become a shallow, frosty mist. A giant in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the first tilt of the earth back toward the sun. A heavy, cold patience, living on the fat stored in their tails until the ferns woke up again. For a long time, we imagined them in shades of gray and brown, like elephants or rhinos. But the earth loves color. We have found the melanosomes, the tiny packets of pigment in their fossils. Some had ginger feathers. Some had stripes of black and white. Some had the iridescent shimmer of a starling's wing. The Cretaceous was a vibrant, kaleidoscopic world, a forest of emerald greens, scarlet crests, and sapphire scales. A world that was not just large, but beautiful. The air was different then, thicker, richer in oxygen. It allowed for the immense size of the insect and the efficiency of the giant lungs. When a T-Rex exhaled, it was a massive volume of warm, moist air. The atmosphere felt closer to the skin, a heavy, humid blanket. It carried the scents and the sounds further than our thin air today. You would feel the world pressing in on you, a dense, living pressure. Not every dinosaur was a hunter. There were the cleaners, the small raptors and the primitive birds that waited for the giants to fall. They were the recyclers of the Mesozoic. They stripped the bone clean. They scattered the remains, ensuring that nothing was wasted. The life of one giant supported 1,000 smaller lives, a constant, circular economy of energy. The earth taking back what it had worked so hard to grow. Sometimes we find a footprint, but no bones. An ignotaxon, a name for a creature we only know by its stride. We know how fast it ran. We know if it limped. We know if it stopped to look at the water. But we do not know its face. It is a ghost in the stone, a reminder that there are still many giants hidden in the earth, whose names we have not yet learned to speak. A silent, walking mystery. The hour is late in the Cretaceous. The sun is dipping below the horizon of a world that is about to change. The longnecks are silhouetted against a purple sky. The volcanoes in the distance are glowing like embers. Everything is at peace. The giants do not know that the clock is ticking. They're just living their moment. Deep, heavy, full. Let their peace become your peace. Let the weight of their millions of years hold you steady in the dark. The flesh is gone. The scales have vanished, but the iron remains. In the fossils of the great predators, we find the minerals of the earth have filled the voids where life once was. The bones have literally become the mountain. They are no longer organic. They are geology. When you touch a fossil, you are touching the very core of the planet. Cold, solid, eternal. The giants have traded their breath for the immortality of the stone. The dust finally cleared. The sun touched the soil again, but the world was different. The great footprints were filling with rain. The forests of the giants were gone, replaced by the first grasslands. And in that new, quiet light, our ancestors stepped out from their burrows. They were small, they were shivering, but the world was empty, and it was theirs. A new chapter was beginning, written by the small in the wake of the great. We have found pieces of the ancient air trapped in bubbles within amber. When we open them, we are smelling the Cretaceous, the oxygen of a world that was 66 million years away. It is a ghost of a scent, a microscopic gasp of time. It reminds us that nothing is ever truly lost. The world holds on to its breath, waiting for someone to come along and listen. The stars the dinosaurs saw were the same stars you see, but in different places. The Big Dipper had not yet formed its shape. Orion was scattered across the sky. The galaxy was younger, and we were on the other side of the galactic center. But the moon was exactly the same. A silver, silent witness. It watched the T-Rex sleep, and now it watches you. The same light falling on a different world. For millions of years, the giants were hidden, buried under miles of rock. But the wind and the rain are patient. They wore away the mountains. They carved the canyons. Until one day, a bit of bone was exposed to the sun. The earth was finally ready to share its secret. A rib, a tooth, a claw. Reappearing in the light, like a memory that refuses to stay forgotten. Tomorrow morning, when you wake, look at the birds. Watch the way a sparrow moves its head. Notice the scales on its feet. See the fierce, ancient light in its eye. You are looking at a living dinosaur. They did not all die in the fire. They shrunk, they softened, they learned to sing. The roar of the tyrant has become the song of the morn, a beautiful, persistent legacy. Time is not a line, it is a circle. The atoms that made the dinosaurs now make the trees. They make the clouds. They make you. You are resting on a bed of history. The earth is a giant, turning library. And tonight, you have closed the book on the Cretaceous. The weight of those millions of years is not a burden. It is a blanket, holding you steady, holding you safe. The lecture is over. The fossils are back in their drawers. The maps of the ancient continents have been rolled up. The hall is silent now. Only the soft, rhythmic ticking of the clock remains. The giants are at peace. The earth is at peace. And it is time for you to join them in the quiet. Imagine the scent of the ferns one last time. The cool, damp evening air of a world that is no longer here. The distant, muffled sound of a long neck walking into the mist. It is a fading echo, a soft, receding pulse. Everything is drifting into the gray. Everything is becoming the dream. The giants are gone, and the night is yours. I am turning out the last lamp now. The room is dark. The fire in the hearth is nothing but blue embers. I am stepping out of the room and closing the heavy door. Class is dismissed. The dinosaurs are waiting for you in the stone. The stars are waiting for you in the sky. Sleep now. Sleep deep. Good night from the edge of time.